Hello and welcome to the second edition of A Brief Account, our series of mini interviews with industry specialists in the accountants liability market. I'm Andrea Stanford. I'm a senior associate at Mills Reeve in the National Accountants team. And I'm joined today by Tim Gray of 23 Essex Street. Tim, thanks for joining us. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, Andrea. Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm a barrister who's been practicing in professional regulation now for nigh on 15 years, specialising in, amongst other things, accountancy. And I've previously worked as an accountancy regulator, represented many accountants over the years, and of course worked on the other side of the fence as well. So I've got a pretty wide range of experience, and I suppose in theory I'm therefore an expert in this kind of thing.
That's great. So today we're going to be looking at the ICAEW and ACCA disciplinary processes and what you can expect during an investigation. We're also going to look at the link between liability in civil proceedings and misconduct and how the two fit together in practice. So just to start, Tim, could you give us a brief overview of the ICAEW and ACCA disciplinary processes to tribunal?
Yeah, of course, they're similar, but obviously they're not identical, but there are general parallels that one can draw. So in the case of both processes, a complaint will come in or a complaint will be internally generated, and there will then be a triage process and a filtering of that complaint at the first level to see if it discloses any issues that need further investigation. If there are issues that need further investigation, those will be looked at, and then there is the chance for an independent verification of what is being looked at by, in the case of ACCA, an assessor. In the case of ICAEW, I think case examiners they've now moved to. So that's an external process at which point any person complained about, any member or registrant, has the opportunity to input to that process and give their own views and representations. If that process refers matters on, if there's a case to answer, it will be referred on to the disciplinary committee, and ultimately that committee will have the final say on what happens. The investigation doesn't cease at that point. It can continue after that and can uncover other things, but it will depend upon that initial referral. So those are the parallels.
And are you seeing any current themes within the ICAEW and or the ACCA?
Well, I think what's happening at the moment, and I think it's in common with regulation across the piece, is that because of COVID, there has been a huge knock-on effect. And so there are huge difficulties in getting through the backlog of work. So I think both regulators, in common with regulatory practice generally, are looking for those kind of alternative resolutions. So agreeing sanctions or agreeing a course of conduct that can be adopted with members who are complained about, and trying to move cases away from that old-fashioned tribunal route so that they can avoid doing that where possible. Obviously, some cases that's simply not realistic, but that's a tendency that I think both are trying to follow.
And so you must see some serious cases dealing with things such as misconduct, but how often are they looking at things such as poor service?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that poor service can, of course, amount to misconduct, so they're not distinct one from the other. And I think when poor service is over a course of time or is on a multifactorial basis, that is, there are a number of occasions or different types of poor service, then that is being looked at in terms of misconduct. Clearly, where there is a resource pressure, as there is with both ACCA and ICAEW, and where there is the pressure of the backlog they're having to deal with, I think from my point of view, I'm seeing a focus on the more serious cases, which tend to be the less resource heavy cases. It's the more sort of, I suppose, the less serious in that sense cases that tend to be the more resource heavy. And so they're looking at ways of avoiding that investigation where possible. But it's not to say that those aren't being investigated. I think they are, but it tends to be a focus on the more serious cases at the moment.
And what typical sanctions are you seeing being imposed?
Well, I think for anyone who thinks that they're mellowing or softening in their approach. Certainly that's not true of ACCA. ICAEW, to a limited degree, are. I think what's happening in terms of sanctions is that both regulators and regulators across professional regulation in general terms are understanding the subtleties of sanctioning members and registrants a little bit more than they perhaps used to. And so whilst there is still the blunt tool of things like suspension and removal from the register, or erasure, depending upon where you are, the terminology is different. They are looking at different ways of keeping members within the profession and in practice, whilst understanding that there needs to be a recognition of protecting the public and, of course, of protecting the wider public interest as well. So I think there is not a softening, but a change of attitude to a degree. But that doesn't mean that in the more serious cases where there's dishonesty or things of that sort, that the ultimate sanctions won't be employed. They will, more often than not.
Yes, that's true. And we're certainly seeing as a team a lot of cases coming through where we're assisting an insured with a civil case, and also helping them through an ACCA or ICAEW investigation at the same time. So just to finish then, Tim, if you could give one piece of advice to an accountant who was facing a disciplinary process, what would that one piece of advice be?
The best piece of advice I can give is don't ignore it. Don't bury your head in the sand. It's not going to go away. That's the reality of it. And the sooner you engage with it, the sooner you provide those transparent answers and can cooperate with the investigation, the better. And it's worth remembering that a failure to cooperate with the regulator can be an issue in and of itself that discloses a case. So it's only going to make matters worse if you do bury your head in the sand. So don't. And of course, if you need advice and assistance, then you should seek that as well.
Yes, I think that's really good advice. Like you say, don't bury your head in the sand, and seek any additional help you can. Your insurers or your brokers will be able to sort of offer you that extra assistance to get through the investigation. That's been really helpful, Tim. Thank you for your time. I hope that's given everybody a brief overview of the ICAEW and ACCA processes. Obviously, if you have any further questions or if you require any more information, then Tim or I would be happy to help you. So just get in touch with us. And I hope you can join us again for the next edition of A Brief Account. Thank you.